2017 was chock full of good games, like way too many good games. Doesn't matter what genre you prefer or which console you owned, 2017 had you covered. You got Resident Evil 7, Yakuza 0, Neo, Horizon Zero Dawn, Zelda Breath of the Wild, Nier Automata, Persona 5, Splatoon 2, Uncharted The Lost Legacy, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, Sonic Mania, Destiny 2, Divinity Original Sin 2, Cuphead, Middle-earth, Shadow of War, The Evil Within 2, South Park The Fractured But Whole, Assassin's Creed Origins, Super Mario Odyssey, Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, Call of Duty World War 2, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2!
He should have some time to play.
Not enough hours in the day.
Now, if you've seen any amount of coverage of people's top games this year, you'll start to see a startling amount of similarity across multiple outlets. You may have watched the Game Awards 2017 or even listened to my commentary about it last month, and while I agree that the nominees for Game of the Year are all stellar and worthy of the title, I don't think it leaves a lot of room for further discussion. If you want to hear my thoughts on Zelda, Mario, Persona 5, Cuphead, as well as the multitude of other titles represented that I didn't have the time to play, then check out the card on screen or the link in the description. In short, I think many of those games are the best of their kind, even some of the best games of all time, but severely overshadow a ton of runner-ups that easily could have made my top 5 in previous years. So instead of shuffling around the same titles you've seen a million times, I wanted to highlight my top 5 non-GOTY Game of the Year contenders. Again, I didn't have the time to play everything that I wanted to. Horizon Zero Dawn, for example, was one of my most anticipated titles of the year, but got buried in all the hubbub. Same goes for games like Hollow Knight and South Park, which are just sitting on my computer waiting for me to dive back into. With that out of the way, here are my Best of the Rest awards for 2017. 5 is kind of a cheat, since I wanted this list to only focus on games I either completed this year or had enough time with to truly judge their quality. But with my measly 35 hours with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I think I can safely say that it's renewed my faith in the franchise and is a worthy successor to Xenoblade on the Wii. A lot has changed about combat, and I can't speak fully to the game's narrative, but I'm blown away by the game's charm and atmosphere. I have much more to say about the Xenoblade series, and you can expect that to be my first big project of 2018, but suffice to say, Xenoblade Chronicles X left a terrible taste in my mouth, and Xenoblade 2 rights the ship in every way I could have wished for. The cast features some of my favorite characters of the year and is genuinely funny and endearing. Sure, it wears its anime influences on its sleeve much more than previous titles, but wholly embraces its own cheesiness and delivers a compelling narrative rivaling modern anime. In only the first year of the Switch's life, we've had a top-tier action-adventure, platformer, shooter, strategy game, and now JRPG. And given enough time, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 might even surpass Persona 5 as my favorite RPG of the year. But for now, it's my honorable mention in the Best of the Rest.
We need a little romance in our lives too, eh?
Actually, I'm quite all right.
Next up is a little title, literally, that completely mesmerized me. That game's Little Nightmares for the PS4. Now, in my eyes, 2017 was the resurrection of the AAA horror genre. You got Resident Evil 7, Evil Within 2, and the abundance of spooks on PSVR and other virtual reality platforms. For me though, sign me out. Can't stand the genre, but Little Nightmares really scratched that horror itch for me because, while it has a thoroughly disturbing presentation, the gameplay is surprisingly fun and accessible. You sneak through mostly linear platforming challenges with light puzzle solving, exploration, and stealth, but the game brilliantly balances its scares with its action. It also does a great job of not overstaying its welcome. At a tight 3 to 5 hours, Little Nightmares was a great reprieve from back-to-back 100+ hour games, and one that I had a great time revisiting for trophies as well as 2 really fun DLC chapters. The puppety, stop-motion influenced character designs are as freaky as they are charming, and even when I was being chased, I had this big stupid grin on my face the whole time. The perfect spooky game for those of us who don't normally like spooky games, and in my opinion, a more successful and appealing version of Inside. Alongside Cuphead, I think this one is also a great one to break out and show to company. It'll certainly leave an impression. On a bittersweet note, with the meteoric rise of the Nintendo Switch firmly knocking out the Wii U, 2017 may also be the last great year for the 3DS. If that is the case, I'd be completely satisfied if the 3DS's swan song was Ever Oasis. An ambitious and certainly flawed little game, Ever Oasis makes up for it with a metric ton of charm. Holy cow, this list should just be called Most Charming Games of 2017. I think charm played a huge part in my enjoyment of Persona 5, Mario, and Zelda. What can I say? It was a good year for charm. Anyway, Ever Oasis is a real melting pot of genres. It's mostly an action-adventure game with dungeons and puzzles, but then there's also a town manager, resource economy simulator with Animal Crossing elements and crafting and quests and farming. The shotgun approach makes the experience a little jarring, and some elements and systems are woefully underdeveloped, but nonetheless, I had a blast exploring this game, and the progression loop is really addictive. Keeping stores stocked and your residents happy is nearly as important as discovering new areas, and I felt sufficiently rewarded for however I chose to spend my time. The creatures and characters you meet are pretty simple, and the story is nothing to write home about, but it all culminates in a fresh and wonderful world that I never tired of living in. The music is phenomenal, and even though every environment evokes a desert setting, each area feels distinct and beautiful. I would truly love for this game to get a sequel on the Switch and really flesh out the narrative, but for an adorable little RPG on the go, Ever Oasis is definitely worth taking a dip. I'd say if you've ever played a video game before, chances are you've probably played Tetris at some point. It's just so iconic and easy to understand, and it makes for the perfect portable puzzle game. And Puyo Puyo Tetris is my go-to game to play in the Switch's handheld mode. But what's up with all this Puyo Puyo business, I hear you saying? Well, Puyo Puyo is actually really fun and rewarding after you get the hang of it, and there's still regular Tetris if you're feeling intimidated. One of the brilliant things about Puyo Puyo Tetris is that not only does it inject a lot of life and excitement into a Tetris game, but it eases new players into the idea of buying a Puyo Puyo game. It's the best of both worlds. If it was just one or the other, I probably wouldn't have given the game a second glance, but look how fun and colorful and crazy this game looks. I really have to applaud the game for having in-depth tutorials. I'll admit it took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out the intricacies of Puyo Puyo. But what helped even more was the expansive and, you guessed it, charming story mode. A Tetris game with a story mode? Huh? Yeah, and it's freaking great! Now, does it really have anything to do with playing a puzzle game? No, not really. It's more of an excuse for characters to fight and resolve their differences, but I found the cast really endearing, and the voice acting is top-notch and the writing is genuinely funny. And the story mode regularly mixes things up. First, you're in a normal Tetris match. Then it's a time trial. Then it's a high score match. Now it's Puyos, and it's a crazy speedrun Big Bang mode, and then it's a fusion match with Puyos and Tetraminos simultaneously. There's a ton of variety, and by completing each challenge, I slowly developed my own strategies and practically taught myself how to be a better player. The story compelled me to keep pushing myself, and once I got a firm grasp of the gameplay, I couldn't put the darn thing down. If you're at all interested in puzzle games, or an old-school Tetris fan looking for a shot of adrenaline for the series, I can't recommend Puyo Puyo Tetris enough. And finally, it wouldn't be a video of mine without referencing Dark Souls. A real contender for Game of the Year for me is Nioh. Coming off of last year with Dark Souls 3 and all the DLC that I haven't gotten around to finishing, I could see where a lot of fans are suffering from Souls fatigue. And I'm really glad that From Software took the year off, and it won't be too long before we hear about what they're working on next. That said, I can't get enough of the franchise, and when I saw that there was a brutal, unforgiving action RPG set in feudal Japan where you fight monsters from Japanese folklore, I was immediately sold. I wasn't super familiar with Team Ninja's games outside of Hyrule Warriors, nor had I played combo-driven combat games like Onimusha, Devil May Cry, or Bayonetta, but I really enjoy the layers of complexity in combat that Nioh brought to the Dark Souls format. Weapon types are more limited, but are capable of all kinds of moves and techniques once you get comfortable with them. Now, I tend to lean towards simplistic sword-type weapons or long-reaching spears, but in Nioh I really gravitated towards a heavy axe that not only decimated small enemies with one swing, but could be very nimble and versatile with a different battle stance. That way, even with only one main weapon, I had all the tools I needed to take on anything, and it felt very natural. Now, swinging a massive battle axe or hammer over your head and slamming it down on some unsuspecting chump is immensely satisfying, but when those chumps happen to be massive tusked Oni, Kappa demons, and Tengu birdmen, then all the better. The environments are more bite-sized than I'm used to in a Souls game, but I think they're really stylish and invoke feudal Japanese countrysides ravaged by war and hideous monsters. It's been really interesting to reflect because Nioh is a very scary looking game, and I distinctly remember feeling terrified and tense when I was playing the demos, but that never diminished my enjoyment of the game, unlike games like Bloodborne and Resident Evil 4. Something about the combat is so flowing and empowering and just really clicked with me. Again, the story here never really hooked me, being so steeped in Japanese mythology on top of historical figures and events. I never quite knew who was who or what any of them were fighting for. But then again, William is just some schmuck from England who washes up on the shore in search of his stolen spirit companion and just wants to crack some yokai skulls, and I totally latched onto that narrative. I particularly liked the opening area in the Tower of London, partially because I've been there in person, but I wasn't expecting any European areas, and I love what they did with the place to tie the story together. I could go on and on about the bosses and spirit powers and awesome ninja weapons and scrolls, but I'll just say, if you sat out on Nioh for any reason but are hungry for some Japanese-styled monster slaying in anticipation for both what Ghost of Tsushima and whatever Shadows Die Twice are looking to be, you owe it to yourself to pick this one up. And that'll do it for the Best of the Rest awards. Not so much awards as a list of somewhat hidden gems, but whatever. Besides maybe the heavy hitters, what were some of the best games you played this year? I've already talked to great lengths about Gravity Rush 2 and SteamWorld Dig 2, both excellent sequels that came out this year. If you want to check out my thoughts on them, links in the description. With that, hope you had a happy new year, and let's hope 2018 can shape up to be just as special.